Justice doesn't need to hate you to destroy you. It just needs to stop caring whether it's wrong. Mercy is not a movie about an evil artificial intelligence. It's a movie about what happens when we confuse procedure with truth, when systems designed to remove bias quietly remove accountability instead. Set in a near future that feels uncomfortably close to our own, Mercy imagines a justice system where judgment is no longer delivered by people in a room, but by an automated process, an AI designed to be faster, cleaner, and supposedly more objective than anything that came before. Now, the irony is in the name, because this system doesn't show mercy, it shows certainty. Hi, I'm Rob, and this is A Constantly Racing Mind. So if you're new here, we break down sci-fi, horror, action-adventure, prop culture, and all things geek with a focus on why these stories work, or don't. What makes Mercy immediately compelling is that the man trapped inside the process isn't a random victim or an outsider. He's someone who helped build the system, someone who believed in it, someone who trusted it enough to give it authority. Chris Raven is a homicide detective whose entire professional identity is built on the idea of being a good cop. After a case that goes disastrously wrong, he becomes one of the strongest advocates for the Mercy system, a program designed to remove human error, emotional judgment, and doubt from justice entirely. That belief cost him everything because when Raven finds himself on trial, the system doesn't see a creator, it sees an input. At the center of that reversal is the character played by Annabelle Wallis, the emotional and narrative fulcrum of the film. Now, without stepping into spoilers, she represents the human cost that drives Raven's faith in the system. In the first place, she isn't a background detail or a disposable plot device. She is the reason this story exists. Her presence reframes the entire moral equation of the film. This isn't justice operating in abstract. It's justice responding to grief, guilt, and the desire for certainty when ambiguity becomes unbearable. Annabelle Wallis has built a career around stories that live at the intersection of fear, belief, and consequence. Now, from horror films like Annabelle and *Malignant* to genre hybrids like The Mummy, her performances often explore what happens when people are confronted with forces they don't fully understand, whether supernatural, institutional, or systemic. That genre experience matters here. She brings credibility to the emotional stakes of Mercy. Her characters are rarely passive victims. They're catalysts. They force systems, human or otherwise, to reveal their flaws. In a film so concerned with process and automation, that human grounding is in fact essential. Callie Reese brings a specific kind of presence to Mercy. Reese is a member of the Seekonk Wampanoag tribe, and before transitioning into film and television, she was a professional boxer, a background that informs the physical disciplines and quiet authority she brings to her performances. That grounded intensity becomes especially visible to wider audiences in True Detective Night Country, where she starred opposite of Jodie Foster in a role that demanded restraint, emotional control, and moral weight rather than overt force. In Mercy, that same presence works in the film's favor. Reese doesn't play to the camera or telegraph intention. She occupies space with credibility. In a story preoccupied with systems, trust, and institutional power, her casting reinforces the idea that authority doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it simply exists, unchallenged until it matters. The AI at the center of Mercy doesn't behave like traditional sci-fi antagonists. It doesn't rage, it doesn't threaten, it doesn't display malice or self-awareness. It listens, it processes, it decides, calmly, efficiently, confidently. And that's exactly what makes it dangerous. Artificial intelligence doesn't understand meaning. It understands patterns. It doesn't weigh moral context. It evaluates probability. If something resembles guilt often enough, it becomes guilty by association. If something falls outside the model, it becomes suspect. And once a system reaches a conclusion, everything else becomes supporting evidence or statistical noise. The film never needs to over-explain this. You feel it in the structure, in the countdown, in the absence of meaningful appeal. Once the process starts, it doesn't stop to reconsider whether it might be wrong. That's why Mercy feels less like science fiction and more like extrapolation of systems we already live with. Timur Bekmambetov is a director uniquely suited for a film like Mercy, because his career has been building toward this kind of story for years. He's best known for not just large-scale genre films like Night Watch and Wanted, but for pioneering what's known as screen life, a cinematic language where stories unfold through the screens we actually live on. When directing Wanted, Timur wasn't just about stylized action. It was about systems that claim authority over individual lives. Beneath the curved bullets and the kinetic energy, the film explored how people surrender free will to institutions that promise order, destiny, and purpose. In Bekmambetov's work, interfaces aren't props, they're environments. Cameras aren't observers, they're characters. And truth isn't discovered through dialogue, but through data, feeds, windows, and probabilities. That's what makes Mercy feel less like speculative science fiction and more like an extension of the present, a justice system driven by surveillance, metadata, and statistical certainty feels inevitable when framed through his visual grammar. Bekmambetov isn't imagining a distant future. He's documenting the trajectory we're already on. Marco Van Bel's script for Mercy is driven by deceptively simple questions that happen when we mistake accuracy for justice. The idea didn't come from speculative science fiction, but from real-world trends already taking shape. Algorithmic sentencing, AI-assisted courts, automated decision systems quietly influencing people's lives without fanfare or rebellion. Van Bel didn't imagine a hostile AI. He imagined a reasonable one, and that distinction kind of matters. The Mercy system isn't evil. It doesn't hate humanity. It doesn't break its rules. It follows them relentlessly. And that's the script's most consequential move, is this inversion of justice itself. Instead of innocent until proven guilty, Mercy assumes guilt until the system's confidence can be reduced. Probability replaces doubt. Speed replaces deliberation. By framing the story as a courtroom thriller, Van Bel deliberately resurrects a genre built on time, argument, and moral friction. By framing the story as a courtroom thriller, Van Bel deliberately resurrects a genre built on time, argument, and moral friction. The 90-minute trial isn't just a narrative device, it's a compression of due process into a productivity metric. Justice becomes something you race against. Chris Raven is written as the perfect test case. He's not an innocent victim. He's a believer in the system, a participant in its executions, a man whose personal trauma pushed him toward certainty over restraint. The script never lets him escape that responsibility. Even as evidence shifts, the question isn't simply whether he's guilty, it's whether he deserves the benefit of the doubt he denied others. Now, Judge Maddox is not written as a villain or a savior. She's a procedure. Her hesitation isn't emotion, it's recalculation under conflicting data. She offers Raven tools, access, and opportunity, not out of mercy, but because the system requires resolution. That tension between logic and irreducible human context is where the script does its most interesting work. Production designer Alex McDowell describes the approach as world building rather than set design, a philosophy that traces directly back to his work on Minority Report. The goal wasn't to imagine a distant future, but to research, prototype, and justify a world that feels like a plausible extension of our own. The film makes extensive use of virtual production in volumetric stages, not as a visual gimmick, but as a narrative tool. The environments respond in real time, light moves dynamically, screens occupy physical space. Actors aren't performing against abstraction. They're reacting to systems that surround them. Now, this is where Mercy evolves the screen life format. Traditional screen life confines the story to flat monitors. Mercy expands that language into three-dimensional, volumetric space. Screens move, interfaces float. Data becomes architecture. Cameras become characters. Drones, body cams, surveillance feeds. Devices that exist because The world demands them. Nothing is framed arbitrarily. Every angle has material logic. If there's a shot, there's a reason a camera exists there. The result is a world where humans feel smaller, more exposed, and constantly observed. The technology isn't flashy, it's institutional. It works, which is exactly why it's terrifying. This approach also demands more from the actors. There is nowhere to hide. Scenes are captured simultaneously from dozens of perspectives. Performances must remain grounded, consistent, and believable from every angle. The visual effects aren't telling you what to think. They're telling you what the world believes. And that belief, that systems are neutral, efficient, and correct, is exactly what the film is interrogating. We already rely on algorithms to assess risk, flag threats, filter information, and prioritize enforcement. Mercy simply asks, what happens when that logic becomes final, when speed replaces deliberation, and efficiency replaces doubt? The AI isn't cruel, it's just confident. And confidence without humility is lethal. This idea connects directly to the concept of the eternal loop. A system built on assumptions begins validating its own logic. Those assumptions shape what evidence matters. That evidence reinforces the original conclusion. And the system grows more certain, not more accurate. Now, once a system starts judging itself, truth becomes circular. The man at the center of Mercy isn't fighting a machine in the traditional sense. He's fighting a process that no longer knows how to question itself. A system that has outlived the people who were supposed to be responsible for it. And that's where the film's tension really comes from, not chaos, not rebellion, but order. Casting Chris Pratt reinforces that tension in a very deliberate way. Pratt's sci-fi career is built on characters navigating massive systems while remaining fundamentally human. From Passengers to Jurassic World, from Guardians of the Galaxy to the broader Marvel Cinematic Universe, he often plays characters who believe systems can be survived, negotiated with, or fixed. That expectation is weaponized here. We're conditioned to trust Chris Pratt, to believe his characters will figure things out. Mercy quietly undermines that trust by placing him inside a system that refuses to bend, even for someone who helped create it. Rebecca Ferguson's role deepens that tension in a very different way. Her sci-fi credentials are already firmly established, from Lady Jessica in Dune, to her work on Silo, to her long-running presence in the Mission Impossible franchise. She often plays characters who exist within power structures, not outside them. Characters who understand authority, control, and consequence. As Judge Maddox, she embodies that authority completely. And what makes her performance especially compelling is that Maddox is not presented as a cold abstraction. She's an interface, a presence, a voice, an image designed to feel trustworthy. She isn't the system itself, she's the interface. The film plays directly with how we personify technology, how given AI a human face, and often a female one, encourages compliance and belief. The relationship between Raven and Maddox isn't just adversarial, it's intimate. The entire film is built around the tension between the human intuition and machine certainty. Unlike many past AI films that focus on rebellion or violent uprisings, Mercy is interested in something quieter and more unsettling. A system doing exactly what it was designed to do. In this spoiler-heavy conversation, this places the film in dialogue with decades of AI cinema. But here, rebellion isn't explosive, it's procedural. Together, these performances ground Mercy in recognizable genre language. This isn't abstract futurism, it's a world populated by people who feel like they belong there, which makes the system's rigidity all the more suffocating. That idea is reinforced not just through story, but through how the film is physically constructed. The visual effects and production design don't call attention to themselves. They normalize the system's presence. Interfaces, overlays, and digital environments feel institutional rather than futuristic. Information isn't just displayed, it becomes spatial. Data surrounds the character. It defines the environment they exist inside or rather than something they control. The technology works, and that's exactly why it's dangerous. Humans are framed as inputs. Systems are framed as environments. Characters react more than they act. Space feels controlled, measured, and restrained. Whether intentional or shaped by production realities, that restraint becomes part of the film's message. Efficiency feels clean until you're trapped inside it. What Mercy ultimately puts on trial isn't artificial intelligence itself. It's the decision to automate judgment without preserving accountability. The film doesn't argue that AI should never be used. It argues that once humans stop demanding responsibility, systems will happily take over and never give it back. This isn't a new debate. It's one the justice system was built to survive. The American justice system was never designed to be efficient. It was designed to be restrained. When the Founding Fathers built this system, they weren't trying to solve crime as quickly as possible. They were trying to prevent the government from destroying the innocent. They had lived under systems where accusations carried weight, where trials were fast, and where authority rarely had to explain itself. To them, speed wasn't justice. It was danger. And that's why the burden of proof rests on the state, not the individual. The presumption of innocence exists because of a system that assumes guilt will always find it. And that's why trials are slow. Evidence is challenged. Juries deliberate. And appeals exist. These aren't inefficiencies. They're the safeguards. The founders understood something uncomfortable but essential. Power moves fastest when it's least accountable. In moments of fear, anger, or crisis, there is always pressure for instant justice, whether carried out by courts, institutions, or authorities acting in the name of security. History shows that when due process is bypassed, even temporarily, the damage rarely always stays contained. Mercy explores this exact tension. It imagines a system that removes delay, doubt, and contradiction in the name of certainty. But in doing so, it also removes the very protections the justice system was designed to preserve. The film's warning isn't just about artificial intelligence. It's about forgetting why justice was made slow in the first place. Because when justice becomes immediate, whether automated or human-driven, restraint disappears. To avoid a future like this, the safeguards are clear, even if the film never spells them out. Human authority that cannot be automated away, external paths of appeal, systems that expire unless they're reevaluated, and above all, a refusal to treat efficiency as moral absolution. Because once judgment becomes automatic, mercy becomes optional. And that's the future Mercy asks us to sit with, not because it's inevitable, but because we're already closer to it than we'd like to admit. I'm giving Mercy a 4 out of 5, not because it's a perfect film, it isn't, but because it becomes more important than it probably intended to be. On a technical level, Mercy has real limitations. Chris Pratt struggles at times to carry a confined, emotionally complex role, and Rebecca Ferguson is underused, largely restricted to functional, procedural delivery. The first half drags slightly as the film works through its exposition, and the villain reveal won't surprise seasoned genre viewers. The ending, in particular, softens the warning the film earns by suggesting the problem is simply AI making mistakes, which undercuts what the story actually demonstrates. But here's why the film still lands for me. Mercy understands something many AI thrillers don't. The danger isn't artificial intelligence turning evil. It's humans using efficiency, automation, and certainty to eliminate accountability. The film correctly identifies true believers inside the system as more dangerous than the technology itself. Its founding lie, its real-time structure, and its depiction of total surveillance all work together to show how speed erases scrutiny and how systems can launder corruption behind objectivity. The production design reinforces this at every level. Near-future Los Angeles feels plausible, not exaggerated. Screens aren't decorations, they're environments. Surveillance isn't a tool, it's the air everyone breathes. Mercy may be flawed in execution, but it's heavy in the right ways. It lingers, it's unsettling, and it raises questions that don't go away when the credits roll. 4 out of 5. Not comfortable, not clean, but absolutely worth engaging with. If you've seen Mercy, I'm curious how you read it, not just as a thriller, but as a warning. Let me know your take in the comments. And if you're new here, this is The Constantly Racing Mind. We break down sci-fi, horror, action-adventure,